So which iPad Pro is better, the 11-inch or the 12.3-inch? Well, today I'm going to be giving what I think is a definitive argument as to why the 12.3-inch iPad Pro is the better iPad Pro, and I think it's going to be a hard argument to debate, but of course it's the internet, so leave your comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss as we cover your favorite tech and video games. I'm Chris Grant Jr., it's the Granted Geek Show. All right, so let's start off light and start with the obvious. The 12.3-inch iPad Pro is a bigger and better screen. It's bigger, obviously, but it's also better because it has the mini LED HDR capability that the 11-inch just doesn't have. Apple's been trying to shrink down that mini LED technology, and they did it with the Pro display first, then they did it with the iPad Pro, and now it's on the MacBooks. I don't think they're able to get it down to that screen size yet, but it's definitely coming. However, I don't think we're going to see a refresh on these iPad Pros until 2023 because they're just that good, and typically it's a 1.5 to 2 year cycle from the 2015 original iPad Pro to 2017. Then it was back-to-back 2017 and 2018, but then there was another 2-year gap, and we didn't get one until last year, 2020, and now with the 2021, I don't think we're going to see the next one until 2023. Hopefully they do an 11-inch refresh with the HDR, but as of right now, that's where it stands. From there, I want to move on to just an anecdotal kind of personal note. I cannot stand multitasking on the 11-inch. I've used both for extended periods of time, and I just feel like multitasking on iPad OS is broken on the 11-inch. The screens don't make sense. The shapes that you can make, splitting something into a third is too thin, or halvesies is just, it doesn't work for me, okay? But that's just personal, so don't take that too seriously. Next up, let's take a look at a relevant trend, or what I believe is a relevant trend. We had from iPhone 3.5-inch to what is now a 6.7-inch. The 13-inch MacBook Pro, people loved that they just made it a 14-inch. We have the 16-inch MacBook Pro from the 15-inch MacBook Pro. The original iPad was a 9.7-inch screen, and currently we have an iPad Pro with a 12.3-inch screen. Obviously, I'm pointing out that screens are getting bigger, but it's not just because bigger is better. You see, there's a separate but closely correlated reason as to why the screens are getting bigger, and that reason is we're doing increasingly more things on these devices, and with great power comes, well, bigger screen sizes. If you take the original iPhone 3.5-inch and compare it to an iPhone 13 Pro Max with a 6.7-inch, the iPhone 13 Pro Max can do vastly more things. Even the camera on it is being touted by Apple as a cinema-like camera, something you can do real professional work on, and so people are going to want bigger screens. Obviously, Dolby Vision, OLED screen, you can edit HDR content, you're going to want a bigger screen for that, and it's the same across all of these devices. The MacBook Pro, people like the 13-inch, and they said, oh, well, we don't like the 15, 16-inch, we want something small. But I didn't hear much pushback when they moved from 13 to 14-inch on this, and obviously from the 15 to the 16-inch a few years back. And even further back, they had a 17-inch MacBook Pro because it's an understanding that real pros and people who use these devices all the time want bigger screens. Now, it's not to say that the people who prefer smaller screens aren't pros. Check it out. They're typically not using the iPad as their daily driver. They're not doing as much with their iPad. They typically do their main or primary work on something like a MacBook Pro or an iMac, and then the iPad is more of an accessory or an afterthought, and that's why the screen size can be smaller. Whereas someone like me, I use the iPad Pro as my daily driver. This is what I get all my work done on, and YouTube because I just prefer it. It's got to be 12.3-inch. I've tried the other sizes of iPad. It just doesn't cut it, and I'm going to go ahead and say this is probably the case for the majority of content creators. But even people who don't create content, who aren't YouTubers, I think they generally would like the bigger screen size if they do more work on the iPad Pro versus the smaller screen size. But I did want to come down and definitively say that the 12.3-inch is better. I'm just exposing the reason why I think it's better, and I think that can be a general rule, is that if you don't agree, it's because you don't use the iPad Pro enough. And I'd love to hear from those folks who use the iPad Pro as their daily driver who still prefer the smaller screen. Also, I think this is going to be a trend we see continue with the redesigned 2022 or 2023 iPad Pro, where they're going to shrink the bezels, and that 12.3-inch will become a 12.5-inch, and the 11-inch will become maybe an 11.2, 11.3-inch screen. These screens are just going to creep up on you bigger and bigger. Anyway, guys, let me know down in the comments below if you agree or disagree and why. Also, like the video if you think I made a good argument. Dislike the video if you don't think so. But guess what? Nobody's going to see the dislike count, so does it really matter? matter if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear. Anyway, subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss as we cover your favorite tech and video games. I'm Chris Grant Jr. It's the Granny Geek Show.